Hello, I'm Athena, and welcome to the Quarantine podcast. Today, we have our first special guest ever. It's a really special day, and the special guest is
Hello.
he's my friend Gloryann. She's an essential worker, and this podcast is going to be very special. Just before we really get into it, I just do want to apologize if there is any issues. I don't like editing podcasts because I kind of don't really like hearing the sound of my own voice, and my internet is kind of having issues right now, so I'm sorry if it's kind of a mess. Um, Hopefully next week will be a little bit better, but we are kind of doing it spur of the moment type podcast. So, Gloryann, how have you been?
Pretty good. How about you?
The same. Just kind of mad at my internet connections, but it's fine. Everyone has to deal with that, so yeah, pretty good. Sorry, I'm not really good with small talk. I don't really know what else to ask you first before jumping into things. So did you work today? Maybe another question.
No, actually, today was one of my few days off. Um I've been working a lot lately during COVID, surprisingly, and my days off have been very sparsely.
Okay. Just to start off light, into getting into your job and all of that. So what have you been watching during quarantine?
What I've been watching?
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching a lot of YouTube on my free time. Hulu, Netflix, but mainly YouTube.
Any recommendations for us on YouTube or Netflix or Hulu? Any shows?
I rewatched Pitch on Hulu recently, and as I'm a big baseball fan, for those baseball fans out there, it's a pretty good TV show.
Nice. Haven't heard of it. Not really into baseball, but someone else out there has to be. So
Right? I mean, it's prevalent.
sure. I don't know. um So another kind of lighter question, not really, but how have your I'm also reading my notes and questions off of here if you're watching this podcast. Okay, how has your life changed in quarantine? Have you noticed a big shift from before to now?
Definitely. It's weird because before this, I wasn't working as much, so I would be out of my house more to just either like hang out with friends or do a little bit of errands, and now I'm working more. So if I leave my house, it's mainly just for work.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. All right. How long have you worked at your job? Like estimate.
I work at a coffee shop, FYI, and
An
I've been
unnamed
working
coffee
there.
shop because we can't name it.
Yes, and the unnamed coffee shop because I don't want to get fired. I love my job. Um, I've been working there since October of 2018, 2018.
Great.
It's been about a year and a half, basically.
Okay. Cool. So, what are your hours like now? Don't go into specifics. I mean, because that'll take forever
Yeah.
because it always changes week to week, week to week. But yeah.
Well, I can definitely say before I was working more of a 12-hour week, and it worked out because I had school, and then, or it would jump up to like 15 or 16. But now because of COVID, my work week has been more of like 25 to like 28 hours a week, sometimes over 30 if I cover someone. So it's definitely been a big jump in hours, surprisingly.
Do you like the change? I mean, obviously you're getting more money, but do you find any other benefits to it?
I get to see my coworkers more, which is nice because obviously during quarantine you can't go out, can't see people really. I miss my friends, so it's like they're also my friends too. So it's nice that I get to interact with them more as I'm working more. Again, the money is nice. It's definitely a benefit. So yeah.
Okay. Would you change your hours now? Like, what would you do if it was an ideal workplace world? Would you have less or would you have more?
I
What
would
would you
probably
change?
have a little bit less just because school's coming up soon, and I definitely want to focus on that. But Yeah, because I don't want to be at that 30 mark when school starts, because it's definitely going to be more difficult to keep my schedule up and stay on top of everything. Maybe a little less, like if I stayed between like the maybe 20 to 23 hour range a week, I'd be okay with it.
Cool. Have you seen a shift from before COVID to now, like with your coworkers or with food items, or like what shift have you, like what big thing has changed for you, do you think, at work?
Well, one of the bigger things was before COVID happened, we had a larger amount of employees at the store. We had probably about 15 or 16 at least. And that's not even including like the manager, the bakers. It's just like crew members and those that can like switch shifts. While during COVID, unfortunately, a lot of people had to be laid off. So now we're at like maybe 7 or 8 people of like core people, and then the manager and like bakers.
Okay. So how have the customers changed? Are all of them being cooperative and wearing a mask? You don't have to necessarily go into your horror stories, but that will be another question, and you're feel free to dive into that now, because I think that's what a lot of people want to hear about, or at least that's what I want to hear about. So go ahead.
Oh. Oh yeah.
Spill some
There's
coffee, not tea.
coffee, not tea, even though we do sell tea. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
there's definitely been a change in customers. Ironically, before COVID, if we were getting rude customers, it would be my other coworkers that would get them, and I would barely have any. So I would be like, oh, I'm loving life, like at work. And then now it's been reversed, actually. I'm getting a lot of rude people, and my coworkers are not. They're getting the nicer people, or like, I don't know if it's just they're kind of like just done, and they're kind of like, well, we're in a pandemic, and for me it hits more. But yeah, and we also, yes, we have a lot of people that don't cooperate wearing masks. It's been better now as we've gone on in this pandemic, but there's still those occasional people we have to remind. I'm sorry, ma'am or sir, you need a mask. Some will get pissed off. Some will just, they'll be like, oh, I forgot, go get their mask, come back. And almost everyone wears it below the nose, which is like a pet peeve of mine. But I can't say anything about that because they are technically still wearing a mask.
So if I put it on my head, technically I can go in.
Well,
People
no,
are
it had. Well, I don't know about like what my coworkers would say. I'm pretty sure they would probably say like, "Hey, you have to wear your mask."
Yeah.
But I make sure as long as they're covering the mouth, I can't really like say anything. Because if not, we've had a lot of people be upset because I was enforcing that, like, it has to cover the nose and mouth. It just got to the point where so many people were like getting mad or like leaving or even yelling that even I'm kind of like, well, I don't want to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to deal with that. Like, it's so many people and
Also,
no one's listening.
I would never just put the mask on my head. I do wear a mask, just to clarify. But I would be so bad if I was in your position. If someone wasn't wearing a mask properly, I don't know what I would do. Some people are so immature. I don't know how you deal with them. And especially, I have this question later on, but why don't we just go into it right now? Do you think that the customer is always right? You can answer this from a non-worker, just being a customer. Because I know for me, I know I'm not always right. When I get up to the register and I have to think about what I'm ordering, I forget. I mean, it depends on where I'm going, and if I have ample time to like, I normally like Googling the menu to like I know before I go in there what I want, but also sometimes you don't, and I just feel so anxious and so self-conscious about it. So from your non-worker point of view, from just being a customer and a human being, don't be so mad if your work fires you over that question. Like she said, the customer is not always right. But I'm asking you as a person. I mean, if employees are listening, home dog, you're also a person. You are more than work. So as a human being, as a customer that's going into my restaurant, I have a new one. It's called your mom. And sorry, just do you think the customer is always right? Just, you don't have to answer it if you think you're gonna get in trouble.
No, but as a human being, I genuinely don't think the customer is right, because I find myself going into a place and sometimes I'll even find myself getting irrationally upset or frustrated at like whoever's working the counter for no reason. And luckily I'm able to like notice it quickly, and then I kind of like calm down. I don't take it out on them. But I like see that too, and I'm just like, yeah, no, but from a working standpoint, I still kind of piggyback off of that the customer isn't always right, but I also try to make sure that every customer leaves happy no matter what. And I do everything in my power to try that, whether it's remaking a drink because it's too sweet, or, just trying to brighten up their day a little bit, because you never know. Like it's both sides. It's, yeah, they're not always right, but you also don't know if something else is going on, and that's why they're reacting in the way they're acting.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a tip and a bonus if your employers are watching, and if they are, please like the video.
I definitely knew how to answer that politically.
And share it, and share the video, please. Share it with anyone and everyone. Come on. Just do me a favor. Also, sorry to break up this conversation, but I am trying to answer questions about quarantine, or just, that sounds weird. But if anyone has any questions they want to ask me or my guests next time, you can't ask Gloryann again because we're filming it. I do have an email if you want to just say anything, say legitimately anything. I will probably read it at the end or the beginning of the podcast, maybe in the middle if you have a question for my guests. But it's at athenarethispodcasts at gmail.com. If you want me to spell it out, it's HENARETHIS podcasts at gmail.com. So please email me. Sorry to just promote it. I'm just saying, if you want to be, I do want this to be a two-way street. This is a conversation between me and Gloryann, but it can also be a conversation between me and you, the viewer at home, or Gloryann's employers. Please email me.
And it's also great. That way, your audience gets a different perspective and gets to ask questions from a perspective that you may not be asking.
Mm-hmm. And if you think that you have an interesting perspective on COVID or something to like add, I can maybe make a podcast with a bunch of people that I could just have multiple people instead of just one guest. I am planning only 8 episodes, but it could go up to more. I was planning 4, then I got 8. So, I mean, it's kind of growing. Thank you so much for listening. Sorry to just cut in the middle. I hate when people do that, but I forgot to say it in the beginning, and I'm sorry.
It's cool.
So,
Self-promotion.
Sorry, yeah. Link in bio. So what about the tips? Have you been getting more or less, or is it kind of the same?
It's actually weird because before quarantine started, the morning and the mid shifts would get a lot more tips. And then afternoon, I used to close a lot for a while there. So I would be lucky if I brought home like more than $1, right? So now if I work a mid shift, I'm lucky if I bring home $1. But if I close, sometimes I come home with like $5, $8. And that's like splitting it between coworkers too.
Oh, nice. Do you find that there's a specific time that customers are nicer or meaner? Like, because I feel like in different points of the day, you can either be like so done with the day or like so excited for the day. I think it just depends on the person and the time. What time do you think has the nicest customers, or the least, or not so nice customers?
Probably the best from what I've seen. And again, this got a little biased because I've been closing a lot more lately too with COVID. But probably like 5 to like 7 PM is a good time for people. And then sometimes we'll get like a good amount up to like 7:30. And then after that, we kind of get no one, or like no one tips. Mid shift, definitely like barely anyone tips, which is like noon to like 3.
Okay. So you mentioned closing. How have the times of your work has changed? Has they been closing earlier, opening later? Has that been affected with
So
COVID?
before COVID, we used to close at 11, so we would be out by like 11:30, 11:45, just clean up the place and everything. Now, well then after that, when everything started happening, we started closing at 7, just to like, because we were getting less people, more people were staying home, and then we also kind of wanted to keep like a shorter staff because of pandemic. And now as we're getting more people back, we have a retail spot right next to us that just opened up not that long ago, and we're getting more people from them. So now we close at 9 instead of um 7, so we're out like 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Okay. So you mentioned cleaning up after your shift. Just ignore what's going on in the background. We can't control that. We're all at home, guys.
Yeah.
Um, so you mentioned with cleaning up. Has the cleaning up time been extended a lot? I mean, because obviously you have to clean up after people.
I mean, we're technically having the same amount of time, but definitely when it's slower, we clean a lot more. Before there was times we would just like kind of like stand there or like be like, oh, this is where we restock, or like our quote, like we can just stand there for like a second to catch a breath, especially if there had been a rush or something. But now it's like any spare moment we have, we're cleaning. uh Definitely we're uh pushing up our cleaning protocols. Like before we just like use the normal like floor sanitizer for like the floor, for example. Now we add a lot of bleach to it, that way like for sure we kill all the disinfectants. We got food sanitation wipes once this thing started, so that way we'd clean the surface normally, but then now we have the sanitizer on top of that. And we have a hand sanitizer bottle access to the public. So when they come in to order, they can, get hand sanitizer. And now we're starting to even like sell hand sanitizer. So it's kind of like we've definitely stepped it up. Like still the same amount of time, but I find like all of us still try to make sure that it's clean as possible.
Mm-hmm. So, getting back to the customer and your work, are people allowed to dine in? Are they allowed to use the restrooms? I kind of know the answer to some of the questions, but like, explain how that works. Everyone has to wear a mask. We already know, but like, what else?
Yeah. So for a while there, um well for sure like once it started, no dine in, we were doing curbside pickup, takeout, or takeout, like you could come in, order, and then you have to leave like after you order, you can't. And we have like a little outside area that at that time was closed. Then once they brought back kind of like restaurants could dine in again, our particular store didn't open dining in the store, but we did have chairs accessible, that way if people needed to sit, while they waited, they could. Another sister store like did have dine in, but we didn't. We had our outside like patio open, so that way people could eat and sit outside. Now as things are closing back up again, we have the furniture kind of back in, but the outside patio is still open, so that way if people want to um if people wanted to eat outside, they still can hang out. We can't really enforce the mask there because technically they're outside, and it's technically like where we're at, like the property managers like space. But and then they're eating and stuff too, so it's like you can't really wear a mask while you eat.
Yeah.
And then bathrooms have we shut them down since COVID, so that way it's just for employees only. Definitely have had a lot of customers not happy about that because we've kept it closed, but a lot of the employees agree that it's safer that way. That way, like we get a bathroom, like we clean it, like it's safe, and it's not accessible to the general public. So in case anyone did have something, we're not gonna get it through that.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So going back to customers, because I mean, you work in what would you say you work in? Like not customer service, but is it customer service?
Technically, it's customer service and then like barista stuff
Okay.
because it's a
So,
coffee shop. So,
yeah. So what do you think makes an ideal customer? Maybe not like before COVID or just in general, maybe during COVID.
I think that's definitely a good question. For me, what makes it like an ideal customer is, not everyone has to be in the best of moods because I know, like I've mentioned previously, like you don't know what everyone's going through. You don't know if they've had a bad day, but in my opinion, I guess my standards are way too low because I'm like, as long as they're not rude to me, like I'm fine with that. Like they could have, like I said, they could be having a bad day, but as long as they're treating me like a decent human being, you know, that's all I really kind of care about. Even sometimes some people will come in and apologize because they may think their order is like complicated. Because how sometimes baristas get like annoyed like about annoying orders. But I will usually be like, nah, it's cool, like I said, it's more for me as long as they treat me like a human being. I usually don't care.
Okay. How is curbside pickup going? Because I haven't, for one, have done that. I've only been doing drive-through. So how is that?
It's been a challenge because so we have two ways that we could do curbside app. It's through this different app, which I can plug in. It's called Curbit. Um, you can find certain businesses on there. I won't say what mine is, obviously, but you
Yeah.
can definitely find my business on there. Um, and they tell you like where the car is, how far away they are, their order, and then it tells you like to deliver now, and you can delay it if like it's busy or like you haven't finished the order yet. And then we also have an app for our coffee shop that you can click curbside and then we bring out the drinks to you. It's definitely been a challenge because there's times we've just been really busy when we get curbside orders. And, if we're busy, most of the time, most of the shifts, it's like two people. In the morning, there's maybe three or four, depending, but usually it's like two people. So if we're busy and we have a curbside order, then obviously it's going to take a little bit longer for us to get your order out there. But besides that, it's been pretty good. We get more to go orders because, like I said, our app you could also order like to go, and we make the drink, and then people come in and get it.
Mm. Okay. Do you think there's been more or less people, not less customers, during COVID, before and after? Do you think your business has died down, or do you think it's back up, or how do you feel?
I definitely think when COVID was first announced, or like not announced, but like the quarantine was first announced, I feel like we definitely got a lot more people than we should have, and even at-risk people too. Then it kind of died down for a significant amount of time, and then now that things started opening back up, we're definitely more busy, I feel like, than maybe even before COVID.
Mm. People need their coffee.
And their donuts. We also sell donuts and food, but yeah, they need their donuts too.
Can't relate. So, um, do you fear for your life when you go to? I mean, I know it's not like that dangerous, really, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean, do you fear when you go to work? Like, there's gonna be that one person that is sick, and sorry to make it kind of dramatic. I know, like, we're all scared, but
Mm-hmm.
like, do you ever think about that when you come into work?
I definitely did in the beginning, especially because I have vulnerable and at-risk people at home. I definitely was like, especially with the mask thing, I was like, well, I don't want to get sick because someone came in and they're not wearing a mask. Like, that's not fair for me. And then, we're just like, we're customer service, it's like we don't really make a lot, right? um, but honestly, now is like things have come back. I don't know if it's just because we're busy, but I don't really think about it too much anymore. But we also do get a lot more people complying with the masks. So it's kind of like, yeah, there is that need to worry, but then also it's like, well, it's not really. I kind of see it too as like, well, it's not going to change anything. I still want to keep my job because I still want the income. I need the income. So I'm like, there's nothing I can really do about it at this point, as long as everyone for the most part's complying, we're disinfecting. And yeah, like I said, it was more like in the beginning was definitely like fearful, but then now it's kind of like not whatever, but it's more of a on the back burner. No, not really think about it.
Mm-hmm. Just piggybacking off that question, I know like people are called essential workers. How essential do you think you are in like your like to your job? Maybe not to your job, but how essential do you think that business is? I know it's a coffee shop, people love coffee, but like there's also Keurig. Like not to like
Yeah.
bash your job and your I mean they can come for me, I don't care. Because I for one don't really like coffee. I hope they don't ban me though. But I'm trying to get off coffee and just be healthier for myself, because I mean we go to the same school,
hmm
so I used to try and get, I used to, there's coffee shops there, so I used to get like teas and lemonades and stuff
hmm
instead. And I find it just, I've been drinking a lot of teas in quarantine.
hmm
So um, I was just wondering, how essential do you think there's people in the background, if you're not watching the
Sorry
video,
about that.
all good.
It's
How
stay
is
at home for a reason.
Yeah, how essential do you think like your job is really? Like I know it's kind of a bad question, but I think like what are your thoughts on the word essential, and what do you do for people? Like do you see it as like you're helping people kind of start their day? Do you see it as like kind of like a punching bag for people for sometimes? How do you feel?
I mean, definitely at first, um, I was more like, well, essentials definitely like the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, like those that actually have very important jobs to keep the city and the county
Yeah, they
running.
keep people alive, and you're just
Yeah. So I definitely at first I was like, yeah, no, I'm not really essential, and I still kind of see that, just that it's changed in a way because no, don't get me wrong, like I don't see myself as essential, but like there's definitely less of hating that I would, because there was a time period I would kind of hate when people would be like, oh, thank you, like you're still here, like you're essential, and I'm just like, no, we're not. But we've donated stuff to like hospitals, and we do get a lot of like nurses that come in and have our coffee and stuff. So it's like, yeah, we're not essential, but I do feel a little better that I know people who are working, and I get a lot of my regulars are nurses and doctors, and a lot of them work like 6-7 days a week and then get their day off. So I kind of like I said, even though I'm not essential, I do feel good that I know I'm giving them their coffee to keep their energy up and keep them kind of going a little bit, and sometimes I'll even write like little cute messages on the cup, just to brighten their day a little bit, because I know it must be hard for them.
yeah.
Like I said, we're just at a coffee shop, we think like the Karens we get are bad. It's like I can't imagine what they're dealing with during this.
Yeah. Okay. What else do you think that needs to be done to protect people at your work? Do you think you guys have been doing a fine job? Like, what else would you see if like money wasn't an issue?
Well, we only have, um, for example, we only have like one screen protector for one of the registers. For me, it's not that big of an issue because people are still wearing a mask and we only usually use that one register. But it would be nice to have both. um, Definitely maybe a little more, less afraid that, if customers aren't complying, less afraid to, anything come up of it, retaliation or anything, if we say like, hey, you do need to wear your mask, or social distance, because that's another thing, some people don't comply with the social distancing in the store. We have the markers, we even have some outside too, that way like if there's a line, people can social distance. But usually like we're too busy, or like we kind of know that people have to know. And then we also know the fights that are come up gonna come up if we say something about it. So we usually don't say anything about it. So I feel like if we were less worried about people retaliating against us, it'd be nice to be like, hey, you know, we have the stickers on the floor for a reason. Most, again, still do comply, but it's always those few that don't and don't want to listen, or just, you know, say it's a hoax or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah, this is very controversial. Don't attack me in the comments or anything, but, you know, we definitely, like I said, if there was less retaliation from people who don't want to comply, then it'd be better.
They could also just go somewhere else. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
find that I'm not an essential worker or anything. I haven't really worked at all. And I feel lucky that I haven't needed to that much. I mean, I would, as you know, I was gonna probably be working 2 jobs over the summer, hopefully, but those got canceled, and it's whatever, you know. So what do you think about like what would you I mean, obviously treat people how would you like to be treated. Honestly, I ran out of my questions because we went really quickly, and it's about I'm keeping the time kind of on my phone. That's why I'm looking down.
Mm-hmm.
We're about like 27 minutes in, maybe a little bit more, because I did start it kind of late. And I didn't want these podcast episodes to be like 45 minutes long. So let's just sing for the next, I'm kidding.
I'd
But
be like, okay, bye, guys. No.
I just want it to be longer. I feel kind of bad if like my episode's longer than the one that's actually kind of important. Because for me, I didn't really, I will kind of maybe talk about me a little bit. I'm sorry to be like, me, but it is kind of my podcast. But no shade. But I know we're talking about essential working and everything like that. And I didn't really mention it in my first episode that, I mean, everyone's going through a tough time. And I mean, I'm not going to be here on my high horse being like, oh, all these bad things happened to me. We're all dealing with stuff. I haven't been dealing with that much. Gloryann, I know you as a friend and is your friend. You're not my employee or employer, coworker, but we're just friends. And you've been doing a lot with like stressing out about work and your home life.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Want to just add on to that? I mean, I know because we FaceTime all the time.
Yeah.
You're just always stressed out because, I mean, it's a lot to handle. I mean, we're living through a pandemic. No one else that we know have really lived through a pandemic like before us. Like there wasn't like a guidebook. No one has ever written a book about how to deal with being a pandemic. I mean, it is good that we can have these conversations, and without this technology, this wouldn't be a thing. Podcast would not be a thing. Yeah, probably would. I'd probably just be talking to a rock. And you guys might be listening to a rock. I don't know. So I think it's just interesting how the pandemic has like shaped our lives, and it's definitely going to affect things going on in the future. I think one good thing about it is that your job is kind of stable, which is good.
I'm very surprised it was, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, long as the employees kind of want to stay there and kind of want to earn the money, which we do, and as long as, you know, I genuinely feel like we're pretty safe there. Obviously, it's not foolproof, nothing is, but I feel like as long as we kind of stay where we're at, or if we add a couple more like precautions or whatever, then, you know, like no one's really gonna be like, unless one of us actually like gets sick, which we haven't, we've been safe and everything, then, you know, like no one's gonna be like, hey, we should shut down, you know, because we've been okay and we all appreciate the paycheck. But it definitely has been more stressful. Like you've mentioned, I've definitely a lot more, you know, have been like, hey, I'm really stressed because of work. Yeah, it's scary because like when people got furloughed the first time, or let go at first, I still remember where I was. One of the newer people we had at the time was working that day, and I was just like on my couch relaxing. Well, sort of, because my hours had been cut drastically, because at that point we still had our full staff, but we were closing at 7, so people's hours were getting drastically cut. Some were like, the new people were working like 6 a week for like that week, or were scheduled to. So I was relaxing stressfully, kind of, you know, like those memes where it's like you're watching Netflix stressfully.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was doing. when one of my coworkers texted me. Well, no, my boss first texted me, my manager, and she was like, "Hey, can you come in today?" and give me the time. And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like I'm definitely not going to say no, especially during everyone's hours being cut, the pandemic. And then I remember like a little bit later getting a text from a good friend of mine, coworker, shift lead. He's like, "Hey, not to scare you." He's like, "But did you get let go?" And that like set me like my, because I deal with anxiety, and the stress and everything. So I was so anxious, and him saying, like, "Don't freak out," which of course I'm gonna freak out. So then I was like, "No, did you?" And I was like scared, like, is the phone call coming? Is the text coming? I luckily was not one of those people let go. And then there was like 9 of us in total at that point, like for the whole store staff. But it's definitely been a fear of like, if business doesn't pick up, yeah, I have great hours, but are they going to go back down, or am I going to get let go? What's going to happen? We luckily, because business picked up again and our hours are like 2 hours later now, we did hire that one coworker back that I was texting, but everyone else that wanted to come back either couldn't, or they just couldn't, or like they didn't want to, or they found a different job. So then we hired a couple other new people. That's kind of where we're at now. But it's always, now, like, I got my schedule for this week, like an hour, if that, before filming this. And I'm working 20 hours this week. And it's kind of weird how this pandemic has kind of like programmed like my coworkers' brains, because before this it was like, oh yeah, you get whatever hours you get, and it's like nice. And like I said before, I would get 12 hours a week, so like 20 should be like oh, it's still a lot. But because I was working almost 30, now it's kind of like it brings those concerns of like, should I be worried? Is something gonna happen? Even though it's just a natural, like, people's hours are gonna get cut because we have new people, and then we're not opening till 11 or closing till 11 now. We're still at 9,
Mm-hmm. Okay. So kind of the main purpose of this podcast was, a bunch of things, but it's kind of an interesting time, as I kind of mentioned, that we're, as you hopefully know, it's not, we're living in like an uncovered time, like not uncovered, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Just like it hasn't happened before. No one has had to deal with this. And kind of the point of this
Well,
podcast, okay, no one that I know have dealt with a pandemic. I know about a lot of people, but I don't know those people. So I just kind of the point of this podcast is to get different people's perspectives on this weird time that we're living in. It's very strange, and I write daily sometimes in my journal. And I remember hearing about COVID back in January, and like none of us would have predicted this would have came from hearing about it. And I remember I read my journal a couple weeks ago, like a week ago, just like before I was thinking about doing this podcast. And I was like, dude, whoa, to myself. I wrote, like, I remember seeing January 3rd. There's this thing called COVID-19.
Wow.
I've heard about it. My dad is a little worried, but I'm not worried as much. And then the
Wow,
next
January
day,
3rd.
I think it was like around that time. And then the next day it said, well, now my mom's freaking out about COVID-19. Thankfully it's not come to the US, but I hope when it does, we can deal with it. So I kind of just want to kick myself in the past because
That's actually crazy that you mentioned it, because we have a mutual friend. His name's Ryan. He's basically like my brother. And literally like the Monday before like everything started getting shut down, me and him went bowling at a bowling alley by school. And I remember we were talking about it. And I distinctly remember like my mom, him, and me sitting outside on our porch after bowling talking about it. And I remember him going like, yeah, it's nothing to worry about at this point. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like the flu. And he's also an essential worker. So, and because I'm so close to him, I'm like, oh yeah, like I trust what he says, right? which I still do. But like, I remember like, oh, you know, we don't have to worry about it. Then like that Thursday, school got shut down and
Yeah.
everything started shutting down. And I remember texting him about it and kind of being like, whoa, what the heck? And I remember him telling me that where he lives, it was getting pretty bad, and that they were kind of like telling essential workers, like, yeah, try not to leave the county because it was like that bad. And just, it's just so weird how, like you said, like, like you remember like writing about it, or you see that you wrote about it, it's like, oh, it's nothing to worry about, and then like it just changed so suddenly, and then all of a sudden we're where we're at now.
I mean, I'm usually a big worrier. I'm trying to deal with that, but I'm very scared of things, and as you know, but like I'm very cautious. I'm just a cautious person. I've grown up with that. I mean, my mom always had the news on when I was a little kid, and I remember this one time. Sorry to like change the subject. This podcast is a little depressing. I mean, honestly, but I'm trying to like poke fun at it. Hopefully, you find it kind of enjoyable, and I'm trying to add some humor to it. But I mean, it's kind of bleak for me to like add humor to like a sad topic where people are dying. So I mean, I don't know how I feel about it, but I just am a really cautious person. I'm not like Emma Pillsbury from Glee, like always like frantic and OCD about like hand sanitizing. And if you are, oh my god, I don't know how you deal with that. But for me, I used to be a lot like that. I used to always carry a hand sanitizer with me a lot. But then something changed in high school. I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. And I'm not really supposed to curse, so I'm sorry that I just did. But it was really my mindset that changed. Like I shouldn't be so overprotective about myself, me getting sick, because I mean I did get sick after that. I mean I'm like I went to a really small middle
Not
school.
corona, not
Not Corona.
corona.
No, yeah. So, but basically, my middle school was really small. So we had about how many people there would be in my freshman year, times 4 the amount of people in my high school. And I remember like first week I had to like, okay, because I mean you had all this preconceived notions about high school because you watched Disney Channel movies and stuff like that. So I just remember being like, okay, I can't really be that one kid who freaks out about germs and things. I mean, kids are freaking so bad. Like they're not just not clean. Like no one's clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think just human beings, period, are gross. Kind of don't like being human sometimes, but I mean, I can't change that. I mean, all animals I think are kind of gross. My dog just keeps licking his butt. We all have our quirks. Some more than
That's your
others.
dog's quirk.
Mm-hmm. Oh god, it really annoys me. But I saw the shift in my mind to being overprotective about like every single thing that you touch could kill you. Like to me, and like anything you can do can kill you. That was like my mindset, and obviously that's very limiting. I mean, I was doing a bunch of things, and I was like, I constantly felt like I was walking on eggshells, and I kind of had to grow out of that. But I find that maybe I shouldn't have. You know what I mean? I haven't gotten sick or anything, but I feel like everyone is like that. Either I think the world would be a much less scary place, and also more fear, I guess, in ourselves. I don't know what the point of this was, but I think it's just like how people change, and you're kind of now I'm not really overprotective about like anything I touch. I'm kind of more protective like about who I'm with and like who I'm talking to and what I'm doing. More so of like what am I touching, where am I looking? Like you're not policing yourself. You're kind of taking notice of what and who you're talking to and what is happening around you more than what's happening, what you're doing, what's happening.
I think it depends too, because like I said, at first I was very like about the masks. Like it was getting to the point where a lot of people were either taking their frustration out on me, complaining about me, and I won't even get into specifics, but I ended up having a disagreement with a shift lead actually because of that. And it's like that's kind of like once that happened, and then I talked to my manager, it's like a flip switched. And it's kind of like, yeah, I have to worry about it, but I also can't be paranoid about it, especially considering I am working like 4 or 5 days a week. So it's like, in that case, my whole mindset is just going to be, am I going to get it? Am I going to get it? Am I going to get it? And it's not going to be focused on bettering work or just focusing on like customers' needs or like dealing with anything else that comes up. My mind's just going to be stuck on that place. So now I kind of use it to, like you said, more like, who am I with? Like, besides my coworkers, I don't go out. We did like where people drive by people's houses and like honk the horns and stuff for people's birthdays. We did that for our mutual friend, but that was like the only thing besides going to work and
Yeah,
like
I didn't get
maybe
out.
the store or stuff. Yeah, you didn't go to that either.
Mm-mm.
But that was like the only thing that I had done besides like if I go do errands at the store, which I don't usually, it's usually my dad, or work, that I actually like was out and like with people. And even then, we made sure it was very small. Almost everyone stayed in their cars. Everyone was wearing masks. You know, like we were very particular about that. So I think that was good because, again, too, it's like it was during almost like the same time period. So it was able to like, it's better to focus on who you're with, kind of the precautions you're taking yourself, instead of like at work where I can't really control other people, and I can really kind of control what I do to a sense. Obviously if they're like, again, if they're not wearing a mask, yeah, we tell them, but
Yeah.
like that's kind of all we can do. And like I said, I'm kind of glad my mind flipped that way too, because like I said, very paranoid at work and when I shouldn't have been.
Yeah. I don't really know what I was saying beforehand. I kind of just like,
I kind of don't either. I kind of just
yeah.
went on a rant right now.
Yeah, I don't really know. I am so sorry. My mind just tends to do that whenever I don't know what to talk about. Gosh. So, kind of shifting gears a little bit. I mean, I just briefly touch upon this because I mean, I will have other podcasts with different people, but me and you go to the same school. And we did have online school. If you listen to the last podcast, you do know how my thoughts about online school and all my complicated numbers and classroom classes that I took, and how that kind of shift happened. So how I know just we don't have to really talk about that because I'll tell last week's podcast and kind of what next week's podcast hopefully will be about. I'm not really sure which guest I'm going to have on, but I will have a bunch of other guests, not a bunch, but some. And so how have you thought that the shift has been with you working and doing school online? I know it from like a friend point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah, not that good.
No,
For you.
no, it really hasn't. It's been really tough because it's great that it frees up my time so I can work more. But then also I'm struggling in school because, I'm kind of, without wanting to or really kind of meaning to, I'm now focusing my time and energy into work, all into work, instead of like school. And I think for me it was harder too because I got used to going to school in person, and I was like acing not acing, but I
Yeah,
was
not
getting like
acing.
really good, but I was getting really good grades like at the end there, like really like focusing on going to the in-person classes. And my online ones, I fell a little behind, but this is before COVID, by the way. But I still felt like I was in control in a way, and I was able to catch up. And then once COVID hit and I started working more, it was kind of a struggle with the two I had originally in person. And you could like forget about the two I had online. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then I did summer online,
Mm.
which I feel like if I would have done one, I did 2 classes. If I would have done one instead of two, I feel like it would have been better or done like the 12-week one,
Mm-hmm.
because the ones I did were just like the 6 weeks. So it's everything crammed into one, and
Times
then
two.
times two, and then I'm working. So
Yeah.
it's just like, it's definitely a challenge. Definitely one that I struggled with, and I probably will still struggle with going into the next semester. But I'm like setting up at that. Sorry, my brain's like rambling a mile a minute. But so before I got out this table I had, and I didn't really have it organized, and like with my pens and stuff, and like made it a workspace. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like a table that wasn't my bed that I was doing my work in. And even then, for summer, for like the regular school, I was still like doing my homework by my bed. So then now I'm going into this semester like prepping that table so it's more organized and it's actually a workspace. And I'm hoping it'll be better because I'm trying to go in with the mindset like school has to be first, even though I'm working a lot. But I feel like it being decluttered kind of helps me out a little bit. I'm definitely in no way the most organized person you'll
Yes.
meet. You know that.
Yeah.
But if I have it like organized to my way or like a little bit, it definitely helps out a lot. So I'm optimistic, even though even though it was challenging and I didn't do so well. I'm optimistic. Plus, I hopefully you will help me count myself accountable.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest tips, I think what you touched upon, which I give myself credit for telling you to get a new workspace, because I preached about this in my last episode. You really need a separate space, and I tell people, if you know me in
Definitely.
person, you need a space where you can go to work. This right here is where I'm working. Every time I sit here, I think like, oh my God, what should I do? What should I do? I tend to try and overload myself, which is normally not good, but I'm trying to learn so many different things. I'm learning the harmonica, learning the ukulele. My nose is also itchy. I'm trying to learn music theory. I'm majoring in screenwriting, minoring in theater acting / directing, and trying to add another minor in photography. So I'm crazy. Maybe follow in my path if you sound like me. If you feel like you relate to me in some way. But anyway, I know Whitney Cummings and a bunch of other comedians I look up to, and I watch their podcasts. And I would listen and watch so many different podcasts during quarantine. I mean, it really is. She said this before. Podcasts is a lazy person's conversation. You can just be listening to someone else talk about their problems and just tune out your own, which is
Yeah.
so crazy. I just love how she said that. I said I, but I added the two. Listen to their problems, not and tune out your own. Anyway, Whitney, please get me on my podcast one day. Maybe not this one. Sorry, I'm just a fangirl. But I do think for tips for doing with school, because I mean, if you listen to my last podcast, you know I basically got all A's.
Mm-hmm.
1B
Which is,
plus.
but it's still really good though. Not only was it your first year, but especially with COVID, it's like that's an accomplishment.
Mm-hmm. Just my general tips, just to reiterate what I did last week. If you didn't watch that podcast, you don't have to. I mean, it was just with me. Plus, like, if you don't have to listen to all my podcasts. I know that this isn't good. This is just a learning exercise for me to be a good interviewer. My goal, maybe I won't do this now, but maybe like be the next Jimmy Fallon. Kind of, maybe not Jimmy Fallon per se, because but
James Corden.
James Corden, maybe, I don't know. But I really want to host my own show, maybe a late night show, because those tend to be a little bit more out there and eccentric and whatever. So I just want to be a good interviewer. I mean, this one NPR podcast I listened to with this one interviewer, I forgot her name, but she was really good. She's known to be like a really good interviewer. And I took a summer class and we were talking about interviewing, because we at the end did a huge project, and I tried to be a good interviewer. I mean, my mindset going into this type of podcast and going into that interview, this one as well, was I have to be a better listener, is like what I kind of got from her. And I've been trying. I know it takes time to learn, and I'm glad that I'm starting this now, because I mean, Zoom is a little bit challenging, because it kind of stops the flow of conversation where we can talk over one another, because we're kind of like scared. I mean, we can't, I'm not with you. I can't read off your body language and your cues to know if like, because like right now all I'm seeing is your face. You could be hating
Hi.
me inside. You know what I mean? So I think Zoom, it poses an interesting challenge, but also it's so helpful as well, because we would probably, if this had to be in person, we would never do this. Like, it would be
Yeah.
impossible for you to come over to my parents, and my parents would be quiet. But since they're on their own meetings now, I finally feel like it's possible. It just opens a new window of opportunities. Like, I kind of like what I want to end this podcast with, is take this time that you might think is horrible for you and make into an opportunity. I started this own podcast, and I feel like a loser because I started my own podcast. Sometimes, because people that put podcast, I mean, no, I'm a hypocrite. Go listen to Jeanette McCurdy. She did like, I'm starting a podcast video. She talks about how she kind of makes a lot of people that have their own podcast. But then I do that too. I think we all kind of do. We see people living what you want to do and kind of just judge them for like doing what you want to do, which is not the right way to go at it. But I think all of us kind of do that. So my notepad's just falling right there. But it's very interesting how we tend to judge and not really like make big steps and big leaps for things we want to do. One thing I do want to say is that my dad, during this whole entire COVID thing, he's been trying to make his own book, kind of like The Little Prince. And he started writing it, and that's he's been working on that. So I think it's just good to have like people around you or listen to things that help motivate you. For me, I listen to a ton of podcasts. There's some screenwriting podcast I listen to, like Script Notes and The Screenwriting Life with Meg LaFoe. I just found out about that one, just started listening to that one. And a bunch of other comedian podcasts just to like make my day feel better, just to like not be so sad because they're talking about the COVID and all of that. So I would just encourage you, if you're listening at home, to go and do something you always wanted to do. If you want to write that book, start writing that book. It's not going to write itself. Gloryann, that's also for you. Write your book.
I was going to say, you're definitely inspiring me to pick up my book that I'm writing again. And, it's just finding my own routine, but I think I'm starting. I'm like on the baby step of like starting to find the routine, and especially with school gonna start soon. Yeah.
Also, I did curse, and I am trying not to curse. Please do not. What is it called when they like demonetize? Please do not. I swear.
It was just once.
It was just once. I'm so sorry.
It's a good podcast.
Yeah. If you think so, please like, and subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe.
God.
Down below, link in the bio.
I feel like I sell my soul every time I say that. It's just so stupid. But I mean, I don't know. If you want to create content, start creating content. And this is also for me in the future, because I want to make so much content and just tell stories and perspectives that you don't really hear every day. I mean, a lot of them are my stories and my perspectives with the writing and everything, because I am trying to be a writer. So I don't really know what to end this. I know it's kind of sad. Hopefully I kind of ended it with a weird TED Talk at the end. That didn't really work out. The bad TikTok TED Talk. I almost said
TikTok.
TED Talk. My bad. Also go follow me on TikTok. I'll be posting on TikTok when this comes out, because I'm just trying to film videos and I'm really bored in quarantine, and I find myself just sitting here and like have a world of opportunities. Like in my hand, I have a supercomputer. Like I can learn anything I want for free, basically, if you know where to go.
It's like Nike. Just do it. Not sponsored.
Okay, yeah.
Nike, please sponsor this podcast.
I'm not really sure. I feel bad about also for sponsors. I just want to say this: if you're still here, please still be here. That I'm not really sure if I want to monetize this podcast, because I feel bad about making money when my topic is about people that are like losing their jobs. And I would only do that if I am making enough money to donate a portion. And I do need money. I mean, everyone needs money, except for maybe Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos. But I feel bad if I make money off of this. So I hope you know that I'm not making any money off this. I mean, just if you want to know, podcasts are a very easy way to make money, but you have to like have a good podcast. That's going to take a while. Sorry, my dad's talking. I'm not sure if you can hear him. He knows I'm recording. So, I just want you to know that as a listener, that if you think I'm making money, or if if you're watching this and you actually hate me and you're not my friend, because last time I ended it with like, if you're my friend and you watch this whole entire, if you watch and listen to this whole entire thing, thank you. You're now a stalker, not a friend. I said something like that. So if you are my friend and you're listening to this, you are now being promoted to a clown. I'm joking. I don't know.
Because you're still with this.
I don't know. I find podcasts, I like listening to other people that I don't know personally. I feel like if Gloryann, if you were to start a podcast, and I think we are going to start our own podcast one day, I would probably listen. Okay, yeah. I'm going to promote that at the end, but we're not going to do it now. But I don't like listening to people I know personally, because it's going to make you think of them in a different light. You're going to be like, and podcasts are very intimate.
Mm-hmm.
You know? It's really weird. So if you are my friend and listening to this, thank you so much for supporting. but also like don't think of me in a different light. I know if you know me like really personally, you probably like think like, oh, she's crazy. You're right.
Well, I know you're crazy, and I'm your friend.
I know, yeah.
There's
but
a
I
difference.
mean,
I don't think. I know.
if you're my acquaintance and you're listening to this, thank you so much for supporting. We're now on a new level of friendship, and please comment down below or just DM me. And I would
Or
love
email the podcast.
email me. Yeah, thank you. Thank
Email
you
the
again.
podcast.
Email. It's at athenarethispodcasts@gmail.com. You know, if you don't know how to spell that, you can just it's athenarethispodcasts.gmail.com.
It's also a link in the bio.
Not really. It's just the name of it is in the bio. Gloryann, thank you so much for being here. I know that so just another small thing. I know I'm outroing this podcast, but I will be doing more podcasts. I kind of love talking, and if you know me personally, you know how much I talk about. I kind of just I will curse again. I'm kind of a shit show of just like information.
Just happen again, you know?
I know. I preface it though. I am very much just like full of whatever. I'm just kind of a product of what I listen to, and I think it's so much information, and I tend to love learning off of people. And then you learn this, you have to tell other people. I think that's another way of learning, is to share what you know, like a teacher. You fully know when you teach someone else what you know. So more podcasts coming soon. This one is kind of sad. I didn't want to start this one because we are in COVID times. We are in quarantine. I am a teen for now. I'm not sure how
I'm
much
not
longer
anymore.
Oh yeah, you're not. Oh, then
No.
why are you on this podcast?
I don't know. Dang, are you gonna kick me out now? Okay. No.
Yeah. Well, I guess we have to reshoot this one, guys. But me and Gloryann, I do have a couple ideas for our podcast. If you know, just one more recommendation if you're still here. Listen to The Basement Yard with Joe Santagato and Danny. I won't link it down below. Just look it up, The Basement Yard. It's just a recommendation from me to you, because that's kind of like what maybe not the next podcast I want to do, because I have like so many ideas. But that's like a really funny one that talks about current issues, but also like makes jokes and stuff. And they do curse a lot, so just yeah. Anyway, Gloryann, thank you so much for being here. I really
Thank you for having
it.
me.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming all the way down here on the internet.
Totally.
Sorry,
on my day off too, yeah, you know?
I know you flew all the way in from Loserville to come to stupid background city. Mm-hmm. This is the background. Thank you. Your Instagram, you want to plug your Instagram?
Yes, my Instagram is Wombat Padres Lover. That's WOMBATPADRESLOVER. That's because an inside joke about wombats, and I love the San Diego Padres, hence even my shirt. I'm definitely taking way too much time of this plug.
Okay.
It'll be down below in the bio.
Yeah, just the name. Go. You know what to do. Also, one more little thing. I forgot. So
Great.
I hope you don't.
Perfect.
Yeah. Just have a good day, guys.
Bye.
Talk to y'all next time.